Order. Move to questions to the Minister for the Economy. I call Paula Bradshaw. Minister.
My Good Jobs Employment Rights consultation sought views on the proposals on flexible working and carers' leave to help address barriers to employment for carers and to enable those with disabilities to enter or remain in work. This consultation closed on the 30th of September and responses are being analysed. In addition, we know that a lack of suitable post-school provision for those with special educational needs causes many carers to consider leaving work or reducing their hours to support the young person. That is why I have asked tasked officials to review the position in relation to both skills and training provision and the relative legislative protections and to bring forward options for improvements.
Ms Bradshaw.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answer. So, when I met with Orchardville, you'll know they're an organisation in my constituency and operate across the province. You know, they are concerned that there's not enough mention of support for people with learning disabilities and how barriers are going to be removed. And I suppose they would be looking to see how you are going to ensure that their needs are met, but measured that they actually are met in terms of the implementation of the action plan.
Minister.
Well, I have met with groups campaigning on this issue of post-19 and the lack of provision for people with learning difficulties and other challenges, and I agree that it is an area that has been left for far too long without any provision being made or without perhaps indeed any responsibility, and I'm determined to work with other ministerial colleagues and other departments in relation to seeing where it's a complex issue and it's in relation to seeing where the responsibilities lie, what we can collectively do together. It undoubtedly is a gap in provision. It has been for some time, and I commend those who've been campaigning for that. I think we do have an opportunity over the course of this mandate to scope that out and see what actions are required, and I would hope that we can make progress on this issue and in collaboration with other departments who have responsibility over the course of this mandate, so we can have a plan in place as quickly as possible.
Thanks, Minister, for that. Can you outline what your proposals are around the important issue of carers' leave, please?
Sure.
The Good Jobs Employment Rights consultation proposed to introduce a right up to 5 days of leave for unpaid eligible carers over a rolling 12-month period to provide care for a family member or other dependent who has longer-term or otherwise significant care need. It remains my goal to introduce paid carers' leave entitlement. However, this would be subject to Executive and Assembly approvals and the identification of necessary funding by the Executive. The Ulster University's Economic Policy Centre have been engaged to consider the potential cost of paid entitlement. In addition to the annually recurring costs of providing paid carers' leave, there are other implications such as the availability of funding for any HMRC system changes that would be required. These changes would require considerable set-up costs, and the ongoing costs could be substantial. In parallel with this, I have asked a cross-departmental senior officials group on carers to look at options available to support our unpaid carers.
Maurice Bradley.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 2.
Minister.
The expansion of Ulster University's Magee campus is a commitment in the New Decade New Approach and a priority in the draft programme for government. It is therefore my focus at this time. I have no plans for a similar task force for the Coleraine campus. However, I fully support and recognise the benefits of Ulster University's 3-campus model. Over the last 10 years, my department has provided £16.5 million in capital grants for investment in the Coleraine campus. My department is also working with Causeway Coast and Glens Borough Council and Ulster University to develop proposals for a centre for food and drug discovery at Coleraine as part of the Causeway Coast and Glens growth deal. I will continue to collaborate closely with Ulster University to support the sustainability of all of its campuses.
Mr Bradley.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his answer. But in reference to the Minister's regional balance strategy, I look at recent funding allocation by the University supplied to my colleague Philip Brett. Capital spend within the University for 23-24 was Magee 4,183,000, Studio Ulster 7,658,000, Belfast Cross Digital 1,252,000, Jordanstown 1,880,000, Coleraine 122,000. These figures are stark, although not specific, Minister. Therefore, does the Minister think it is time this Executive look at establishing an oversight body to monitor and regulate our universities to ensure equality of opportunity and equality of development?
Minister.
Well, our universities rely on funding from ourselves largely, and of course they're challenged in as much as we're challenged in providing funding. And I'm sure had we more funding available, we'd provide more funding across all of our university campuses. But Ulster University have a commitment to all three of their campus. That's the prospect of the proposition of the university. Of course, there's a particular focus on Magee because there's a recognition that it was an all-party support for expansion there. There's an actual target set in relation to the number of students, and Ulster University are working closely with the department and indeed the Magee Task Force to achieve that outcome. That's not to say that any other campus will be neglected, and certainly there will be opportunities for Coleraine. I know additional courses have been brought there as well. As I said, over the last year, £16.5 million worth of capital investment there. So obviously, in terms of how the university itself divides up its resources, that would be a matter of their own autonomy, and it would be a matter for the member to discuss with them. But I'm confident that the university is committed to all of its campuses.
Hello, Brogan.
Thank you, Cancurla Agus Bruhish Lesh and Ira Fosta. Can the Minister confirm if it is still the intention to publish the Magee Expansion Action Plan before Christmas?
Minister.
Yes, it is. We received an interim plan with a number of asks in relation to not just a number of departments in the executive, primarily our own, but also in a number of asks in relation to Southern Government, and we have communicated with other ministers and indeed with ministers in the South in relation to that. We hope to compile answers to those questions in relation to the task force's work fairly quickly. It still is their intention to publish a final report this side of Christmas, and I look forward to receiving that.
Well, Timothy Gosson.
Hey.
Minister.
As autonomous institutions, universities are responsible for their own policies and procedures, including recruitment and retention. Regarding the recent appointments of co-directors to lead Ulster University's new Strategic Policy Unit, I have received assurances from the Vice-Chancellor that an established process was followed and exercised appropriately.
Mr. Gosson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The public believe that it is at best highly questionable that a former Minister for Universities who has produced no academic research of note should be promoted via an exceptional talent pathway which disregards the regular appointment process. What will the Minister do to ensure this doesn't happen again, that there is an obvious conflict of interest in this case, to ensure that it doesn't happen in future?
Minister.
Well, as I said in my original response, the universities have autonomy in relation to the recruitment and retention procedures. I have communicated with the university, and they have provided me a response assuring me that these recruitments were carried out in accordance with their own processes, and that then is a matter for themselves. So there is no further role for me to play in that regard.
Peter Martin.
I want to thank the Minister for his answers thus far. He just mentioned that he'd received assurances from the University of Ulster Vice-Chancellor that an established process was followed and exercised. To quote from that policy that he referenced in his answer, it can only be used in a very small number of cases where the potential exists to recruit a truly world-class academic. Can I ask the Minister what assurances were provided to him by the Vice-Chancellor Paul Bartholomew that both the former Alliance Party Deputy Leader and former Special Advisor to the Alliance DAERA Minister were truly world-class academics?
Minister.
Well, that is a judgment that the university itself would make. We are not in the business of making that judgment. What we wanted to ensure, given that there was a public element to this appointment process, that they were satisfied that the processes that they have for this particular recruitment were followed in accordance with their own procedures, and that's what we were assured in relation to. We didn't ask any questions in relation to the status of the candidates.
Emma Sheeran.
Corlia, Keshaver Keherla, the whole question 4, please.
Sir.
Research indicates that due to our large agricultural sector, we have significant potential to use biomethane to support our path to net zero. Biomethane can provide locally produced, sustainable source of energy which could help to decarbonise the gas network and transport while enhancing our energy security of supply and improving waste management practices. Biomethane could present significant economic opportunities for the rural economy in the creation of good jobs, raising productivity and addressing historical regional imbalances. There is also potential to develop new revenue streams from byproducts of the production process, such as digestate and biogenic CO2. My department is currently working towards a policy framework to support the development of an economic and sustainable biomethane sector.
Sharon.
Thank the Minister for that answer. Minister, can I ask what actions you are taking to support the development of the Mid-Ulster Biorefinery Cluster?
Apologies. I recently visited the companies involved in the Mid-Ulster Biorefinery Cluster to discuss their plans to create a nutrient, energy and carbon services sector based on a centralised agricultural feedstock biorefinery. I was very interested to hear about the project and both the opportunities and the challenges it is facing. As such, I have agreed to schedule a meeting with the Biorefinery Cluster and senior officials from my department, the Department for Infrastructure and DAERA to facilitate a roundtable discussion on a range of issues, including planning, single farm payments and nutrient management policy. I was also pleased to see that the project was very recently awarded £4 million by DAERA under their Sustainable Utilisation of Livestock Slurry Phase 2 project, which will fund mobile slurry separators to produce feedstock for anaerobic digestion.
Jonathan Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answers. There is huge potential with biomethane, and it's encouraging to see such innovation, particularly in the Mid-Ulster area and further afield. Does the Minister anticipate any specific clauses within the new regulatory bill that will come forward from the Department which will deal specifically with biomethane direct injection to the grid?
Minister.
Well, there already has been use of biomethane in the gas network. I think in the Dungannon area there are targets to increase that usage. I think it up to about 30% over the coming years. So I think we're already on the way in terms of how biomethane is developed and used. We see it as a key element, one of a number of key elements in terms of our drive towards net zero, or also our drive towards sustainable and secure energy supplies. And so we will, I'm sure, in terms of any consideration of regulations or any other matters that the Department is dealing with, make sure that that is in line with our desire to see this economy grow in a very sustainable way around biomethane.
Edmund Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister, for your answers. We recently got a briefing at the Economy Committee by Professor David Rooney, your critical expert in net zero. He suggests that at the current rate, net zero will only be reached by 2118 if we continue to work at the pace that we're doing. That's 68 years after 2050. Does this concern you, and what are you doing in order to ensure that we are within target?
Bit of a distance from the original question, but I'll leave it in your hands, Minister.
Well, I might take up the rest of the question time, but can I say it is a recognition that it's a huge challenge. It is also a warning to us that we have to proceed at a much greater pace than has been proceeded to date. It is a whole of executive challenge, and that's why in relation to biomethane, when I did the meeting with them, what I wanted to do was arrange a meeting with DAERA, with infrastructure, to make sure that it's no point in one department giving people support to advance our objectives towards net zero, and other departments then either being a hindrance or not at the same level of support. So it is a whole of executive project, and it will only reach the targets that the ambitious targets that we wanted to reach if there's a whole of executive buy-in, and we need departments working at pace and working together to try and achieve that.
Kelly Armstrong.
Please.
Minister.
Our apprenticeship system has been growing, and we now have over 13,000 apprentices. However, women, people with disabilities and people from disadvantaged areas are underrepresented. I want to address barriers to participation in apprenticeships for these groups. The Apprenticeship Inclusion Challenge Fund will drive collaboration across the education, business and voluntary and community sectors to develop and deliver innovative solutions to these inclusion challenges. I am pleased to update that the fund, worth more than $600,000, opened for applications on Wednesday the 30th of October. This fund will connect more people across our communities with good job opportunities, promote regional balance and inspire lifelong learning in line with my economic priorities. Projects will commence in January 2025.
Ms Armstrong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Minister. Minister, can you outline what proactive engagement you will be undertaking to promote the Apprenticeship Inclusion Challenge Fund amongst those businesses and individuals in order to meet your targets?
Minister.
Well, there has been a significant engagement already before the fund itself opened. I think there's been over 200 sessions with over 200 stakeholders across education, training, employers, industry and the voluntary and community sectors. And these sessions were intended to help raise awareness of the fund and encourage participation. As I say, the fund has opened. The application window will be open for 6 weeks, closing on the 6th of December. So I would encourage all of those who have an interest in this area among our public elected representatives to make sure and spread the word among their constituents.
Cathal Boyle.
John Corley, could I thank the Minister for his answer so far, but could the Minister expand on who is eligible to apply for the fund for Mill Market?
The Minister expand on what, sorry? The funds. Well, the apprenticeship. If the funds would be delivered, that, as I said, there will be 600,000 that has been put into this fund. There will be the application is open from the 30th. It will be closed in 6 weeks. And what we're encouraging people who are in the have an experience or an interest in the apprenticeship system, but also in organisations not directly involved in current apprenticeship delivery, but who have an interest in becoming involved in that, to apply, because we certainly want to expand the proposition in relation to our apprentices and try and get as many people as possible involved in that.
Philip McGuigan.
Deborah O'Shea, question 6.
Sure.
Since its launch in November of last year, Go Succeed has established itself as a key part of our economic infrastructure. It's clear that it is having a positive impact on our local entrepreneurs and businesses. To date, Go Succeed has provided start-up support to over 4,300 individuals across the North. Over 3,200 businesses have been provided with advice and guidance on how to grow their businesses. Almost 650 grants have been allocated to local entrepreneurs and their businesses. I want to commend our local councils on Go Succeed's progress to date. I look forward to working in partnership with them to support businesses across the North in the future.
Mr McGuigan.
And thank the Minister for his response. And further to that, can I ask the Minister for his response to the British Government's proposal to reduce Shared Prosperity Fund?
Minister.
Well, firstly, we had pressed for some time to ensure that the Shared Prosperity Fund was continued on, and that was as part of the budget announcement. And I mean that was welcome, because what we were heading towards was a cliff edge in relation to funding for the Go Succeed project. As part of that announcement, there was a caveat, if you like, in that the Shared Prosperity Fund was to be reduced by 40%. We want to ensure that we have to obviously analyse that in terms of what it means for the Go Succeed programme, which, as I had outlined, has been very successful, and we want to see it continue at the same level it's been at. I will be in London tomorrow. I'm having a range of meetings with ministers in relation to this and a number of other matters, so I intend to raise this directly with the British Government tomorrow.
David Honeyford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and thank the Minister for his answer and the answer to this on Go Succeed. Can I just ask, just to further, you talk about the success of Go Succeed. Can we give your assessment when you benchmark that against other similar schemes in GB or in the South? Thanks.
Minister.
Well, I think we're constantly assessing, when the programme has come to an end, there is an assessment. It's not only in terms of what it has achieved, and I outlined some of the statistics in terms of that. There's obviously feedback from those who operated in the councils and enterprise agencies and others who are involved, but also there will be benchmarking exercises against others. So the determination, I suppose, over the last number of months, because of the uncertainty that hung over it in relation to the funding, was to make sure that the funding was there to allow it to continue. As I say, we have largely secured that. There's still a question mark over the full level of funding, which I intend to pursue tomorrow. But that is a measure, I think, of the belief in its success, in that there was a very strong focus to try and get the programme continued. Of course, we'll continue to assess its effectiveness as it goes along.
Guy Midland.
Speaker, the Minister will be aware that Invest NI are going through a series of reforms, and obviously there's a look at sub-regional offices and what that will mean for the local areas. Does he see Go Succeed continuing in its current format, or will that also be looked at in terms of fitting in with those sub-regional plans and the plans of Invest NI?
Minister.
Well, Go Succeed comes from a funding stream which was provided directly from London, and it was important, given our challenged financial circumstances, that funding stream would continue to support that, because that's a very significant chunk of what Invest NI and Regional Balance would be looking to do in terms of securing start-ups right across the whole region, the growth of businesses across the whole region, advice and support to businesses to allow them to grow, to improve productivity and good jobs and more regional balance. So in the first instance, we will be looking to continue to secure that programme. The outworking of that will obviously be aligned to the priorities that we have set and Invest NI's priorities, and the idea of councils then and groups, partnerships within, supported by councils, coming together to decide their own economic priorities. I have no doubt that the idea of start-ups, business support, support for growth will be very much part of every area's regional prioritisation in terms of where they want to go with the economy. So it's going to continue to be an important programme, and of course we will try and align it into our own priorities in relation to regional balance.
Padraig Largy.
Question 7.
Minister.
Tourism is incredibly important to Ireland. It's a major part of our economy, and it helps to spread prosperity right across the island. In 2024, Tourism Ireland completed an analysis on the return on market investment. For 2023, they have calculated a return on investment of 25 to 1 for the top 4 markets of US, Britain, Germany and France. The market delivers the greatest return on the investment based on total investor spend in the US, which was 48 to 1, confirming it as a particularly important market for us. It's vital that we build on these impressive figures and support our tourism providers in showcasing Ireland's tourism offering. As part of this, I recently attended engagements with global tourism operators in Chicago, Toronto and in London, having previously attended meetings with them in New York earlier in the year.
Mr. Largy.
I thank the Minister for his answer. And Minister, what will be the impact of the additional £6 million in Tourism Ireland's 2024 business plan?
Of course, any additional money for Tourism Ireland will have a significant impact. And this morning, NISRA had just released Q1 tourism statistics, which for the first time includes an estimate in day trips taken to the north. I think that shows, in terms of that and overnight stays, shows the extent of the growth of our tourism business over the course of the last number of years, and we want to continue to encourage more growth. Promotional activity which is undertaken by Tourism Ireland has £2 million spent on consumer advertising, £3 million on e-market and almost £1 million on targeted cooperative marketing with air and sea carriers. And based on that recent return and the statistics that have just been produced this morning, that is a growing success, and we want to try and continue to encourage that.
Well, Brett.
Speaker. Minister, the York Aviation report commissioned by your department highlighted the agnostic nature of the location of airlinks onto this island by Tourism Ireland as having a disproportionately negative impact here in Northern Ireland. Can you advise the House then when you will bring forward your route development proposals as highlighted within that York Aviation report?
Minister.
I don't share that view. I think that the promotion by Tourism Ireland of the whole island has been increasing in terms of strength. We have ourselves benefited significantly. As I said, figures released this morning show that 5.4 million overnight trips have been taken to north between March 23 and March 24. That includes 1.2 billion of spend. About 10% of those have been from outside, or actually 37% when you take Tourism Ireland promotes tourism off the island, 30% of those trips are from outside of the island. There are 16.3 million day trips taken as well, and that's about another 1.1 billion spent. So we can see that investment in promotion, in advertising and in targeting markets, and I've been present at some of the engagements that have targeted tour operators both in the States, in Canada and in London. And you can see that that promotion, which is run by Tourism Ireland, has become very effective in terms of providing visitors to here, and a very significant spend, which of course is vital to our tourism and hospitality industry.
Justin McNulty.
Minister, you will know For years now, I, alongside my SDLP colleagues, have been campaigning for the inclusion of counties Armagh and Down in Ireland's ancient East. Can you provide me with an update on what efforts you have made with the Irish Government and with tourism bodies to support this campaign becoming a reality?
Well, I can assure him he's not been alone in terms of that campaign. I'm not surprised that he speaks on his own behalf in this matter. What I've done is I've overseen the joint arrangement between the 3 tourism bodies on the island and both departments to sit down together and to come together, on, particularly in relation to a number of issues, but very particularly in relation to the Fáilte brands. There already has been investment in terms of the Fáilte brand in relation to the Causeway Coast. There has been significant progress in relation to Ireland's hidden heartlands with involving Fermanagh and Omagh Council in joining that brand, and we are in discussion in relation to Ireland's ancient East and the benefits that it undoubtedly would bring and that tourism branding brings to the east coast of Ireland. So much work has been undertaken since I came into office, and we have, as I said, put together both departments and all 3 tourism agencies for the first time to work together specifically on this project.
Diana Armstrong.
Speaker, Minister, the introduction of the electronic travel authorisation is being seen as a barrier to those international tourists arriving into Dublin and transiting on into Northern Ireland. What steps are Tourism Ireland taking to mitigate against that, to prevent any damage to our local tourism industry?
Well, it's actually a matter for myself as the Minister responsible to take action. Tourism Ireland does promotion and advertising, but the tourism industry as a whole are very, very much aware of this. 70% of our international visitors come through Dublin. If there are barriers to be presented in that regard, then that will have a significant chilling effect in terms of the amount of those people who come north of the border. And that has been a very, very important, particularly when you look at the statistics for the US market and the spend and the return on the investment and advertising that we get from there is very significant. So we have continuously raised this. I wrote to the Minister responsible in London seeking an urgent meeting, and I'm pleased to say that I'll be meeting them tomorrow to press this case in relation to the proposed suggestion of electronic travel authorisation position, which I think will have a very negative impact on tourism here.
Alicia McHugh.
Concordia, cash to Hucht, number 8.
Sure.
The McGee Expansion Task Force interim report outlined a series of asks for the key stakeholders required, including executive departments, Ulster University, Derry City and Strabane District Council and others. The task force is progressing to address these asks, engaging with stakeholders to secure their commitment and action in advancing the expansion. I am pleased to report that progress remains on track. The task force will present its action plan in December, which will outline a clear roadmap toward achieving the target of 10,000 students in Derry at the earliest possible date. This year, I already allocated funding for an additional 500 undergraduate places at McGee and recently announced plans to offer tuition fee loans for graduate entry medical school students.
Mr McHugh.
Minister, what engagement has there been with other departments regarding the expansion of McGee?
Minister.
Well, as I said in response to an earlier question, McGee expansion wasn't just a New Decade New Approach agreement among all of the parties and both governments. It is now a priority within the programme for government. So, given the clear message in the interim report that the McGee expansion requires collective support of the entire executive, I've shared the interim report with executive colleagues seeking feedback on their commitment to the expansion. I've received several responses. The task force will now consider these responses and determine what further information is required. Officials from my department have had discussions with their counterparts in Department of Health and Department of Infrastructure regarding McGee expansion. Additionally, a representative from Department of Health is a member of the task force, and DFI officials presented at the last task force meeting on the 9th of October.
Skimmons.
Case Schaefer and E. Leatherhull. Question number 9, please.
Mr.
I recognise the importance of trade missions and their contribution to delivering my own economic plans. In September, I travelled to the US and Canada with 12 innovative technology companies receiving universally positive feedback. I met business leaders and politicians to strengthen transatlantic relationships and launched the Canadian Advisory Council to support the North's trade and FDI strategy. Recently, I returned from a technology mission to Singapore with 7 fintech companies collaborating with Enterprise Ireland and the IDA, which led to positive business opportunities. This mission reflects my commitment to fostering collaboration across the island for greater economic impact. Last month, 8 companies also participated in a successful multi-sector mission to Mexico with Invest NI, marking the first mission since the new office opened.
Ms Gimmons.
I thank the Minister for his answer. And I understand, Minister, that EOS IT Solutions were on the Singapore trade mission last week. Can the Minister say any more about this company?
Briefly, Minister.
Well, we had the opportunity with AOS, of course, yes, we're on that visit. They're a very successful and growing company in the Banbridge area, and we had the opportunity with them to visit one of their client companies there, Meta, in its Singapore office, and was hugely impressed, not just with the work that they've been carrying out and the opportunities they've been creating overseas for their business, which is based here, and the employees which are based here, but certainly the professionalism and the high regard with which they're held by very, very significant global companies. So I think that they are a company which is on a very significant upward trajectory, and I look forward to continue to work with them in the time ahead.
Moving to topical questions, I call Sinead McLaughlin.
Speaker. Minister, did you make a specific bid in the budget monitoring rounds for monies to support small businesses in light of the current economic challenges and arising operational costs?
Minister.
Well, there are a number of programmes that are run by Invest NI to support businesses. Support for small business in particular comes in a number of factors which relate to other departments, including rates relief and other measures. So no, there was no specific bid from the department because this was a return on money which would be spent over the course of this financial year, which would not be allow the development of new processes to start to deliver money. But what we want to do in terms of the bids for funding that we have, in terms of supporting business through other measures, through skills, through provision of a talented pool of employees available to them, to supporting our colleges and our universities and providing skills and training opportunities for young people. So there are many ways to support businesses rather than direct cash grants, and this wouldn't have been the process to apply if the department had in mind any other programmes like that.
McLaughlin.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. Well, obviously the pressures of cost and inflation have not gone away, and businesses are really, really struggling. Many business organisations have said it's sometimes difficult to meet with the Minister. Will you commit to meeting representatives of small businesses, FSB, Retail NI, Hospitality Ulster, or local regional chambers as a collective, so that you can together meet some of their challenges?
Minister.
Well, I think all of those organisations that you have mentioned, I've met several times over the course of the last 6 or 9 months. Well, if they want to meet as a collective, if that's your suggestion, I very much would invite them to write and ask to meet as a collective, and I'll arrange it as soon as we possibly can. But the sense that, I have to correct this sense that it is difficult to secure a meeting. I have met all of those organisations, many of them many times over the course of the last 9 months that I've been in office, and I will continue to meet them in the time ahead.
Jerry Carl.
Tried to ask 5 different ministers about the use of US military planes in Belfast International Airport. I wrote to you about the issue. To my knowledge, there's been at least 24 landing and departures of US military planes in the last few months from Belfast International Airport. What's your department's assessment of the frequency of those flights and what's on those planes?
Sir. Well, we don't have that information. To be quite honest, we're charged with supporting the economic routes and development of routes with airports. Therefore, we don't gather information in relation to that.
Carl. Thank you, Minister. I appreciate you may not have the information, but I want to ask what has you and your officials done to try and get that information? I don't think it can be a passing of the buck, given the reports is under your remit. So I want to ask you, what have you and your department done to try and get the information to find out what's on these planes? There's serious public concern about this issue. There's monthly protests at the airport, and given the concern that raised about Shannon and Belfast International, I think it's within the duty of your department.
We've got the question, Mr. Carl. We need to move into the speech. Sir.
Well, I say if the member has information to supply, I'm very happy to follow it up with the airport authorities. I'm not sure, because in relation to similar questions that I've heard, it's generally flights that are coming from the United States in through these airports. I'm not aware. We don't have any direct connection from the north to the United States. So if there are specific questions that he thinks that need to be raised, if he would send them to me, I'm very happy to see can the airport answer them.
Paul Crawford.
Speaker. Minister, can I ask what specific strategies are being implemented to support the rural economy in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
Rural economy?
Yeah.
Well, a range of measures. Firstly, the recent strategy we launched in relation to regional balance means that the emphasis in terms of support needs to shift from very largely Belfast-based out to the rural economies and to the regions to the northwest, to the border areas, to make sure that there is support there. Some of the energy questions that I was answering earlier in relation to biomethane, wind, renewable energy generally have great opportunities ahead for them in rural areas, because that's very largely where a lot of these industries would be located. So we are trying to encourage, as I say, a focus and a refocus in Invest NI, not just in terms of FDI, but in terms of start-ups, growth of our Indigenous businesses, opportunities which we're promoting through dual market access for our companies to grow and export into Europe, right across the region. And as I say, particularly in relation to our drive towards green technology and net zero, I think that does lend itself more largely to the rural economies than perhaps the urban ones. And we will continue to promote those industries and try and secure support for them. So there is a lot happening in the rural areas. There needs to be more, and that's why we've set more ambitious targets for growth outside of Belfast.
Mr. Crawford.
Thank you, Minister, for your answer. Can I just ask, how does your department measure the economic impact of policies specifically targeting rural areas, and how often are these assessments carried out?
Well, the whole purpose of the review of Invest NI was to examine, Invest NI being the delivery mechanism for the department's policies, was to measure the outcome in relation to that. There was a significant critique in terms of Invest NI's focus, its relationship with the department, the misalignment of policy objectives between the department and that. So what we have done is we have changed the focus of Invest NI. We have set targets for outside of Belfast. We have ensured that we aligned departmental policy and Invest NI policy together, and all of the other agencies within the department, tourism and all of those other agencies that work with the department, are all on the same prioritisation that I laid out at the very start of my tenure as Minister for the Economy. So that is a new direction. That is one which we have measurable targets in relation to, and we will continue to assess the effectiveness as we move ahead.
Speaker, Minister, in the last 10 years, Belfast International Airport has withheld the development of greater than 21 wind turbines, which is 22.7 megawatt, or 24,000 homes in Northern Ireland. And bear in mind, that's only figures from 3 planning council areas, just 3. By either refusing planning applications or enforcing negative pre-operation planning conditions based on the status of their radar system. Are you aware of this restriction on development?
Well, I'm aware that I'm not suggesting I'm aware of the specific issue that he mentions, but I am aware that in relation, and it was in response to a question I answered earlier, that if we want to meet our targets in relation to net zero, and there were a range of areas and we're moving simultaneously, and one of them is wind, biomethane, hydrogen, geothermal, that we need all departments to be acting together, and planning is very much part of that, because there is no point in some departments pursuing and supporting growth in certain industries, and we find that there are planning restrictions or interpretation of planning policy that holds things up. So very much, when I spoke about Mid-Ulster Biorefinery, we were setting up a meeting between infrastructure, DAERA and ourselves to work through these issues. So I think collectively executive departments need to work together to make sure that the accelerated growth we need in terms of meeting our net zero targets is an all executive approach, and that all departments are working together to make sure that is achieved.
Mr. Buchanan.
So far, Minister, will you commit with working to the airport to resolve this restriction on wind generation? It's the airport is restricted, the planning is there, but the airport is the restriction or the bottleneck on this.
You might find in the first instance that it is, if it's a plan issue, it's between infrastructure then, but I'm very content to work with other ministers. I repeatedly and continuously work with other ministers and have conversations with other ministers about collectively what we're doing in this area. And I know in terms of energy, in terms of DAERA's interest, in terms of infrastructure's interest, we have a very significant collective interest in making sure that our targets in this regard and our development of wind energy and other energies it moves ahead at pace. So I'm very happy to be part of a discussion in relation to that. Whether it's our lead in that regard, I'm not precious about, but I'm very happy to be part of a discussion.
Can Corley, I understand the Minister's meeting with ministers in London tomorrow. Can the Minister provide an overview of what issues will be discussed at that meeting? Minister.
Well, it's all of the interests of my own department, and as I referred earlier in terms of the question around the ETA. We will be meeting, Minister, in relation to that. We're meeting in relation to energy. We're meeting in relation to trade. I think I've 5 meetings set up over the course of the day with different ministers in Whitehall. So we've had many engagements to date, mostly online. And we want to take the opportunity to go over and meet face to face to pursue some of the issues that we want to pursue, things like the enhanced investment zone, to make sure that we are, now that we've finally received word as part of the budget that investment is available to us, we want to make sure that we develop that at pace as well. So there will be a range of meetings across 5 different department areas which coincide with my own ministerial responsibilities to ensure that we advance in relation to all of that.
Mr Boylan.
I can thank the Minister for his answers. Does the Minister agree that the Go Succeed programme is very effective in supporting small businesses and that its budget should be maintained under the Shared Prosperity Fund?
Yes, and that's one of the engagements we'll be having. As I said in response to an earlier question, Go Succeed has been a very effective programme. The concern over recent months is that there has been a kind of a cliff edge looming in relation to funding. As part of the budget announcement, it was announced that it would be a full year of Shared Prosperity, but at a reduced 40% reduction. Now, I don't know if that applies right across the board or that applies to specific projects, and we want to tease that out, but Go Succeed has been a very successful project for us in terms of our ambition for start-up, for business growth, right across the region, so we want to ensure that that programme succeeds, and that's the conversations we'll be having tomorrow.
Ian Murphy.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his answers thus far. Minister, can you provide an assessment of the tourism stats that were published this morning?
Minister. Yes, as I say, the stats were just released by NISRA this morning. They relate from March 2023 to March 2024. It references 5.4 million overnight trips taken, with 1.2 billion spent. 52% of those were for holidays, 37% to visit friends, 7% for business purposes. People would have perhaps imagined that was a larger market. About 37% then were from outside of the island. And again, that lends itself to the promotion activities that Tourism Ireland is doing. There were 16.3 million day trips taken, and that's about a 1.1 billion spend. And that's largely made up of residents on the island itself. So these are encouraging. Our tourism figures are getting back to beyond where they were pre-pandemic levels, and obviously our tourism industry and our hospitality industry continue to struggle with a range of costs in terms of energy. They trying to come back from the pandemic experience, and ongoing challenges in inflationary costs as well. So these are encouraging figures, and obviously we want to do all in our power to try and encourage sustainable tourism growth right across the north.
Ms Murphy.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his answer, and obviously given the fact that Fermanagh and South Tyrone depends heavily on tourism, those statistics are quite encouraging. Minister, would you agree that the success, or these successes, underlines the need for the British Government to withdraw their ETA scheme?
Minister.
Yes, I think that we need to ensure that there are no barriers placed in the way to tourism growth. Tourism is a very, very important industry on our island, perhaps much more than and in Britain, and I think they need to recognise the particular circumstances we have in terms of the entry point for most of our international visitors, the importance in terms of small businesses outside of our main urban areas that very much rely on tourism and tourism trade, our hospitality sector, which has been under the cosh for quite some time, particularly as a consequence of the pandemic and inflation. So I don't think any barriers should be placed in the way of that, and we will be, as I say, having discussions tomorrow with a range of departments in London to try and ensure that we promote all of our business interests.
Question 7 has been withdrawn. I call Carla Cullion.
Just very quickly, just for an update on the social enterprise co-design group, Minister.
Minister.
Yes, pleased to say that that design group is up and running. I think the Social Enterprise Awards were last Friday night, which I missed due to my travels, but again a very successful event. We have tried to put a focus, when I came into office, we increased the support that the department was given to social enterprise NI. We have put a focus, as I did when I was in the finance department, focus on supporting social enterprise. We put together a task force to work on a number of priority areas for social enterprise. I understand that report will be coming to me quite shortly, and I'm looking forward to receiving that and look forward to delivering on the requests that will be contained within that report.
Ms McCulley.
Thank you. So, Minister, just following on from that, can you confirm or even advise, when you look at this report, if social value in the procurement will certainly feature in the new action plan for this sector?
Minister.
Well, I think that already social value in procurement, it was introduced when I was Finance Minister, and obviously the responsibility and the interest in terms of increasing that percentage of social value within procurement will fall now to the current Finance Minister. But there's no doubt from the reports we received that has significantly increased the profile and the business and the growth of social enterprise. So I look forward to seeing that following through to the 20% that we had originally envisaged, and I know that the Finance Minister herself is very keen to support that.
That brings to a conclusion questions to the Minister for Economy. If members would take their ease while we change the chair.